Hey, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Clinic Gym Radio. I am your host, Dr. Josh Satterlee, and it is my absolute pleasure today to be joined by Dr. Lindsay Mumma. Lindsay, how are you?
I am doing great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm well. Lindsay, where are you calling in from today? Where are you joining us
Raleigh, North Carolina, which is
beautiful.
Not quite as warm as it needs to be right now, but the sun did just start peeking out. So hoping for a warm weekend.
Fantastic. All right. Well, for those of you who are listening and don't know Lindsay, she is, I met her at the Parker seminars, and Parker basically pulled a Tom Brady move with her, recruited her early, got her cheap, but she's a rising star and will be amazing things here. So for those who
I don't think I've ever in my life been compared to Tom Brady.
Well, listen, for those who know Tom Brady's story, I'm comparing you to the photo he took at the NFL draft, where he's, yeah. Number 85th or whatever he was. Exactly, yeah. No, you're way ahead of him.
I don't care. I'll take it.
No, you're a way better chiropractor than he was at that point in his life. So, yeah. But anyway, so Lindsay, you are, Parker has you talking all about the pelvic floor. You have taught for various entities all about the pelvic floor. You've taught all about keeping women healthy, pre, post, mid, natal. Is there a mid-natal or is it just pre and post?
I think maybe you ought to just real quick throw a trademark on that, because I don't think I've ever heard mid-natal, and I'm like all up in the pregnancy world.
Yeah, maybe we should start the midnataltraining.com or something,
Yeah, before anyone else does. What a great idea.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, if you're listening to this, forget you ever heard that. Wait till you see the course we come up with for mid-natal training. Anyways, can you give everybody a little background of, we know you're a chiropractor, but what else do you do? Because it seems like a lot of people want to talk to you about it.
Well, I'm the owner of my practice, and I now have two other chiropractors who work with me and an acupuncturist, and we have a pelvic PT, and we have a plunge and a sauna and women's fitness classes, and it's a fun hopping place. And I do a lot of work with prenatal and postpartum women, but I also see, dudes who got injured in their desk jockey position, and, weekend warriors and triathletes. And I don't see a lot of pros. I have at times, but it's not something that I am actively seeking. I see a lot of families. There are lots of kids in my office. I have a little kids nook with things to climb on and a giant stuffed llama that they, ride.
Who doesn't love a llama?
Who doesn't love a llama?
No one I would want to hang out with.
It's a very family friendly practice, but I also, I love hands-on manual care. So I will see anybody, and I really enjoy doing that. I kind of got a very special interest in what prenatal care would look like by first getting very interested in what I was going to do for my own fitness in the prenatal time period. I was planning to get pregnant, which I think is a position that not a lot of people always find themselves in. I think it's a significant number of pregnancies are a surprise. And I was looking forward to getting pregnant, and I wanted to plan it all out of what it was going to look like. And I was like, well, I still want to work out kind of like, intensely. And I wasn't interested in taking brisk walks. I really wanted to know how much weightlifting could I be doing during pregnancy. And there wasn't a ton of information out there. I did come across the book Exercising Through Your Pregnancy by James Clapp, and I think it's Marissa Cram. I wish that everybody would read that book who ever works with in a physician capacity or a coaching capacity with pregnant women, because it essentially took women who were deciding that they wanted to be active during their pregnancy and women who were deciding that they didn't want to be active. Because there's like a little ethical dilemma of like, well, how about you try this and you try this and let's see who doesn't die. We're not just dealing with the test participants themselves, we're also dealing with their offspring. And so there's not great evidence for prenatal related stuff. And so they just studied thousands of women who were already making those choices. And what they discovered was that exercise was fan-frickin-tastic during pregnancy.
Hold on.
The
room is spinning here. You're telling me that for human bodies, exercise improves outcomes?
I know. It just, it's
Thank God I'm
baffling.
sitting down for this. I know.
It's baffling. But that's what I was actually
Well, we can
about
basically
to say.
wrap this podcast up right now. I mean, that level of education, I think, is maybe all people can handle for there's somebody
really
getting to the end of their
about it.
notebook and just wrap it up. Exercise works.
It seems like it took so long for that to catch up to pregnancy, though, because in 2012, when I got pregnant, people were like, should you really be hanging from a pull-up bar? That seems questionable. And I was like, in what way? And like, I would finish a workout at the CrossFit gym where I was working out, and people would be like, oh, could I get that for you and put it away? I'm like, really, dude? I just worked out with that. Sure. Now that I've unloaded the bar, you want to take the bar for me so that you can put it back? Like,
and then smash cut to a year later, and you're wrestling a 50-pound object strapped into a car seat that's, awkward, not nearly as easy to lift as a barbell. And then you're, holding it while you can't bend your knees, reaching across your vehicle to like load it into it. It's like, dude, whoever thought that women can't lift weights never saw what women are going to do in the first 2 years of their pregnancy.
Right. And when you're doing it in the postpartum time period, you're doing it without a restored sense of core stabilization. That just, I mean, I absolutely disagree with the idea that pregnancy wrecks a woman's body. Like that's crap. But you do have a completely obliterated core stabilization system because of the nature of pregnancy. Because if your abdomen didn't expand, then the very cute space-occupying lesion that's living in your body would be crushing all of your major organs. So your abdomen has to expand, which destabilizes your core. And then in the postpartum time period, the only thing you're worried about is like sucking in so you can fit in your pre-pregnancy jeans. Then you're not helping your core to actually heal. So then you go and stick your 50-pound car seat all the way across the car without being able to offset any weight. And it's nearly impossible to do it without peeing your pants. So all of that to say, I got kind of interested in the stuff. And then I started to realize like all of the stuff that I had even heard just as a young female and then into my 20s was crap. And I was like, wait a second, I've learned a bunch of stuff because I did a ton of DNS when I was in chiropractic college. I went to Palmer, and Dr. Dave Daring is there, and he was a DNS instructor. So I got to work in the rehab department with Dr. Daring. And so I was like understanding all of this core stabilization stuff. And I was like, wait, this is completely going to change during pregnancy. How am I going to respond to that? How am I going to take my athletic endeavors into that? What is that going to look like? And then I was like, and I was mostly treating CrossFit athletes at the time. But as I got more interested in what am I going to do for my pregnancy, then it kind of just started attracting more people to me. And then I got pregnant, and then my belly was like a magnet for other pregnant women to come at the belly. And then it's just kind of been, that's just what I've been doing basically since I gave birth in 2013 the first time. So
that's interesting because, I think, CrossFit gets a lot of bad rap by a lot of people are like making fun of it. Especially like in the chiropractic rehab world, they're like, oh, people shouldn't be doing this thing. But, I've always been an advocate for, at that time, in those 10 years that CrossFit really got popular, major things happened. Number one, most important of all of the things that happened was the proliferation of yoga pants as standard wear for women. That's the most important. Then second to that, and almost as important, is that was the first like training program that was very popular with women that said, train your legs and train them hard, right? Like you should be able to squat and lunge and deadlift and all this stuff. And all of a sudden you started seeing great glutes on women that were not surgically implanted. It was like, whoa, like this is
like the antithesis
awesome.
of the Kardashians.
Yes. But I mean, up to that point, it was like, oh, I do the thigh master. I do step aerobics and all this stuff.
Lean look. I don't want to be bulky.
Right. And it's like, dude, that bulk looks fantastic. Like it's the right kind of bulk. So you saw that. And then you also saw this thing. I really want to know like what percentage of the US population at the year 2000, let's say before CrossFit really existed, what percentage of the population under the age of 30 could perform 3 pull-ups? Mm-hmm. And if we fast forward 20 years later, what's the percentage of the population that could perform 3 pull-ups? Nobody was doing multi-joint, large, forceful exercises like pull-ups and combining it with deadlifts and squatting. There were all these great things that occurred. All that is to say, here you are at during this revolution in exercise, right? Like, hey, it's okay for you to, God like in 2005, it was like, don't squat, it's bad for your knees.
Yeah.
Except for all these people who are squatting who move a whole lot better than people that didn't. Besides that, so
Ignore
I mean,
that.
we're still dealing with like that, these wives' tales about that. And then you're in this revolution of exercise, and then being the person that you are, you're like, what is the tip of the spear of this revolution? Let me go to the most protected population. Oh, women. Okay, nah, I want it to be more protected than that. Pregnant women. Okay, keep talking. Pregnant women who are exercising aggressively, and you're like taking it out to that end and saying, I'm going to work my ass off to keep those people working out and not get injured. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I love working with, I always say, country club golfers. My patient base is male, pale, and stale. They're old, crusty, rich guys. Right? But the reason I love it is challenging wise. I did a survey one time, 70% of my patient population at that time had at least one joint replaced. They'd had multiple surgeries. Like 40% of them had a rotator cuff repair. 80% of them had been in an auto accident in the last 10 years. Like all these things, all these comorbidities, plus they're probably 32% Scotch at any point in their life.
Mostly
and then they're like, yeah, right. And also at 74 years old, I want to take all that and I want you to help me drive the ball 10 yards further this coming Sunday. And it's like, okay, cool. Now we have a challenge. Now my skills are being put to get a 28-year-old, who has mechanical low back pain better in 10 visits doesn't.
It's not really getting out of bed.
Yeah, you don't have to have the world champion belt to do that one.
Right.
So you went the other way. You're like, no, I want to go with women. Now, did you consider, albinos? Were you thinking of albino hemophiliacs, or you're only?
I would like to state for the record that I do not exclude albinos from treatment. I have not yet.
But I just picture you're like, I'm going to build a practice on albino hemophiliac, prenatal, CrossFit athletes.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what I sought to do. So I still have some metrics to meet.
I'll tell you what, talk about niching down.
Be the chiropractor for those people. And it'd be great. I didn't specifically think that I was going to completely change my practice by like looking into this. But then the more that I looked into it, the more I was like, oh, these people don't have anybody. And I know how to read a research article. So I know that when somebody says to me, oh, well, you shouldn't lift 40 pounds over your head. And then I go and look it up and I'm like, yeah, there's literally no data on that. We just made that crap up. Like we just pulled this out of thin air. It has no basis in reality. And the idea that like, if you have your arms overhead, that you're going to wrap the umbilical cord around baby's neck, like where these ideas came from, or the 140 beats per minute that women are supposed to keep their heart rate under, completely made up. All of it was just bogus. And I was like, okay, well, if I'm learning this stuff, my patients probably don't know this stuff. So I could share some of this stuff. So then, I was just saying it to my male CrossFit athletes who were talking about, starting a family, or they tell me that their wife is pregnant or something. And so, and the more that I started talking about that, the more I was like seeing more and more pregnant women. And then, each patient is that opportunity to learn more about what they're going through and what I can help them with, and what is out of my scope of practice. So it's been kind of fun, different. And now I just talk about the pelvic floor all day, which is super great and exciting because we all have them. So
let's hope. I mean, without a pelvic floor, life gets pretty tough.
It gets real tough real quick.
Yeah. So going back, so there you are, you're going through CrossFit, you're pregnant yourself, you're, what were maybe the first big, what was like the first big bet you kind of made with yourself? Like, I think this is complete horseshit and I'm going to basically prove it. Was it, research related? Was it patient related? You said, I really think we can change this approach. So what's the guy, in the Olympics that did the high jump, the Dick Fosbury moment, right? He's like, what are we doing? Why are we jumping over the bar like this? Let's flop over it.
We could flop. Yeah. So I discovered an accidental way that I could hit PRs during pregnancy. And part of that was, so I was a volleyball athlete, but, you know, and I'd stayed athletic and active. I didn't ever have any sort of history of Olympic lifting prior to, you know, we did some basic lifts.
Nobody had a history of it. I competed in Olympic weightlifting in college. And when I left the weight room, like to find a set of bumper plates was, I may as well have been trying to dig up plutonium, you know? It was ridiculous. Anyways, but so, I lifted from like
I couldn't tell the difference between a snatch and a clean before I ever did CrossFit. So I was a little bit in that I'm new to CrossFit, so I'm PRing all the time. But I remember I was 10 weeks pregnant and we were cleaning that day. And my previous clean max was like 130 or 135. And I just was like, I tend to not do my barbell math until the end because I'm not trying to confuse myself. I'm just trying to work out. So I go by feel and I just, you know, throw on some plates. And then at the end, I very much confuse myself. It's like, wait, is that 25? And then, you know, it's challenging. But I cleaned 140. And then I was like, oh, oops. And then I was like, actually, I feel really good. Like that didn't even feel, I don't know that this is a real thing, but I feel like there are these physical 1 rep maxes and then there are the neurological 1 rep maxes. Like a physical 1 rep max is like, okay, I probably can't lift anymore today. And the neurological 1 rep max is like, okay, I am done now. I need a nap. I need a snack. I might need a shot of something, whether it be a steroid or tequila. And I also am not sure.
You get out of the gym and you sit in your car and you just like sit there for like 10 minutes staring through the windshield like, oh my God, I need time.
And what is life right now?
Yeah.
So I didn't hit any neurological 1 rep maxes during pregnancy, but I did max my clean and I maxed my squat during pregnancy. And they were both completely unintentional. I just was like putting weight on the barbell. And then, you know, my previous 1 rep max prior to pregnancy was 200 for the back squat. And I did 205 just kind of on accident, you know, like.
Well, the funny thing is too, if you do the net, because if you think about like body weight, like your body weight is going up, right? Like during pregnancy. But then the flip side is it's going up much faster than you can adapt to it.
Yeah.
In the sense of like, so the net effect of a 205 PR compared to where you started is probably like a 220 or, you know, something like 225 PR because of the additional weight of the baby that you're carrying, but it's accelerating faster. It's not
like additional weight in my glutes and
hands. This is not like a Chuck Wagon buffet weight that you're gaining here. Like this is healthy. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I think that was very eye-opening for me as an athlete and then also as a doctor to be like, okay, what I really want to ensure is that patients are recognizing, like, what would be the point of doing a 1 rep max during pregnancy? There really isn't a point unless what you're doing is just attempting to train the strength and endurance of your major muscle groups. And in so doing, you happen to hit a 1 rep max, that's okay. If your goal is, you know what, I want to see how much weight I can lift during pregnancy, well, that doesn't really match the fact that the intention of prenatal training is actually because you're coming up on your event day. So Olympic weightlifters, they know exactly like, okay, I'm going to have to do these lifts and I'm going to have to execute at this weight. And this is the time that the meet starts and this is the location, et cetera. For endurance athletes, they're like, okay, here's the race map.
Sunday, May 19th, I'm running the Ironman.
Exactly. And so for birth, you don't know if you're going to literally have a baby like an hour after labor starts, or if it's going to be 3 days after labor starts. You don't know if it's going to be this like rapid onset with massive contractions and then holy shit, there's a baby. I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you if it's okay to swear. Or
I guess we're past that point now, huh?
I just asked for forgiveness instead of permission. Or if it's going to be a situation where it's kind of a more of a grueling endurance type of event. So when you're training, you have to have that variability. And that's one of the things where CrossFit does a great job of maintaining a sense of who knows what's coming before you show up to the gym that is actually really great during pregnancy. Now, I haven't done CrossFit since my second child was born in the postpartum time period, which is very, very, very common for women to experience. I was diagnosed with some autoimmune conditions. And so high intensity exercise was not recommended for my newly diagnosed state. I actually have no autoimmune markers any longer. So there's that. I don't know if you know this, Josh, but a gluten-free diet is very helpful. For those of you who do not know, Josh hates that I am gluten-free and dairy-free and also nightshade-free because it makes me a giant pain in the butt. But I use
there we
my
are,
diet
Parker. Hey, would you like a drink? Well, what's in the drink? I don't know, Lindsay. It's a drink. Well, let me check. Is it nightshade alcohol? Is it dairy alcohol? Is it gluten alcohol? And so it's like a giant vacuum cleaner sucking all the fun out of life. But go ahead. Let's keep talking. Yeah. Yep. There's somebody out there that agrees with you. And, you know.
Yeah. His name's Mark Hyman. I don't know if you heard him.
No, he sounds boring. So
obviously a fraud. Anyway, so I haven't done CrossFit since 2016, but I did it through both of my pregnancies. And I was like, okay, my intention here is that I want to get strong. I want to be ready for anything. And I want to maintain a level of physical activity that is going to serve me as a parent.
I love it. Yeah. So one thing I would love to hear from you is, since you're running fitness classes for women. So I can remember one of the most impactful days of learning I ever had. I was listening to Charlie Weingroff. I don't know if you know Charlie. He's an amazing physical therapist. And he was talking about rehabbing this 14-year-old girl who blew her ACL. She was a volleyball player, right? And he was saying, he was bringing up this point about all the factors we forget in rehab. And he was saying that probably the most important thing we do during her rehab is get her to PR and pull-ups. And I remember listening to that sentence and I was like, what are you talking? Like, you said ACL, dude, what? And he knew, he stated that to throw everybody off. And he said, because here's the deal. Where do your lats attach? In your thoracolumbar fascia, right? Okay. That's the backside of what? Your core. Okay. So is it important for her to have a stable core? Well, yeah, that's a good idea. And he said, when she returns to volleyball, do we want her to have a stable core and an ability to go overhead? Well, yeah, of course. It's like, okay, well, what's another exercise where you get a huge stimuli in the upper extremity with a stable core? Okay, pull-ups are pretty good. Yeah. And he goes, and she's 14. So do you think she's dealing with some social pressures, some awkwardness of going through puberty, maybe the, psychology of being like a young girl? I was like, well, yeah, that's reasonable. And do you think giving her that moment to shine in doing pull-ups and hitting a PR would probably spill over into a lot of other aspects of her life? And I'm like, well, yeah. And he said, do you think any of that's going to happen with terminal knee extensions and blah, blah, blah? And I was like, okay, good point. And that to me was like, yeah, that's one of the roles that exercise plays when people are in these bad states, giving them the wins of, if that girl, I'm just picturing in my mind, a 14-year-old, lanky, like you were a volleyball player, like it's awkward, you're all knees and elbows. And then if you hit 3 pull-ups on your own, that's life-changing, right? Yeah, it's huge. And then the pressures of school and boys and, body image issues and all those things start to erode. I'm not saying they go away, but they start to erode. And maybe they erode very quickly, And I was like, and so he's like, so when you're designing your rehab program for this girl, what will make the biggest impact on her as a whole person? And, I'm like taking my pen and like crossing out, knee extension, clamshells, like all the low level BS we give our patients, right?
Right.
So that whole story is to lead into, here you are, you're a doctor, you're treating people for their various things going on in the women prenatal, postpartum. Yeah, midnatal.
You heard it here first.
That's right. But when you get them into these classes, what are some of the big milestones, keystones that you see in those classes of these women where they maybe they start, their fragility erodes, or their perceived threat, right? This constant like mama bear, like everything's a threat kind of idea. What do you see in those classes?
The exact opposite of that, obviously, because that was a very good leading question. But the environment where what we have is women's fitness. And so I don't intend to exclude males from this. But what I discovered was that a lot of my friends that I tried to get to come to CrossFit with me, they were super intimidated by the idea of it just at the start. And, and then there are dudes slinging, huge amounts of weight around, and they're like, that's not really for me. They still kind of have that programming and messaging of, you need the long, lean look, and you're trying to, so I'm like, okay, let's take away all of that. I actually want to do some training that's based on women's cycles. So there are cycles that we all have every single month, but then there are also the cycles of preconception and prenatal, midnatal, if you will, and postpartum that play into what our body.
I think we should just exchange preconception, just say tailgating. I mean, that's really what.
Just in the tailgating era of, that's good. I like it. Kind of the pregame situation. Yeah, tailgating and midnatal.
Yeah, friends are around, might be alcohol. Like, there's a lot of synonyms here.
Yeah. And it's not, I'm going to move on now. So the cycles that we have as females, I wanted to mimic that. And that was something that I had done in my own training, where I was like, okay, when I'm on my period, it's different than when I'm ovulating. And I was reading some more about this, like from Melissa Vivi and Dr. Christian Northrup. I've read a bunch of Stacey Sims stuff, and she's a researcher, and she does a lot on female physiology. And it's kind of cool, but she really refers to things basically as two cycles, a two-phase cycle. Either you're in high hormone or you're in low hormone. And at face value, I like that, but there are more nuances than just two phases within the cycle. And I like that I can kind of compare it to the 4 seasons that we have, because, you have spring, which is very similar to your follicular phase, and you have summer, which is very similar to ovulation, and you have fall, which is very similar to the luteal phase, and you have winter, which is very similar to menstruation. And which, when I present it like that, then people are like, oh yeah, that does make sense. Like, you're just kind of getting rid of stuff, and everything is like, you can't really see any new growth, but it is happening in winter and when you're bleeding. And then spring and follicular phase, like, new stuff is happening. And this would be a new egg that could in summer become a baby. And then in the fall, we're kind of closing the loop. So if you didn't implant, you didn't utilize that egg to implant, well, then we're going to get rid of that. We're going to move on to the next cycle. Anyway, I wanted that stuff to be part of training, because my training changes in the winter and in the spring, summer, fall. And my training changes within my own cycle. And then when I was pregnant and when I was immediately postpartum, that also was part of it. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to play around with programming. And it wasn't something that I'd ever done for anyone else except for myself, with the exception of writing like very short, like, 4-week or 6-week kind of, I want you to do this during pregnancy, or I want you to do this for this sort of specific rehab. To actually write like a year's worth of programming was a really big undertaking, and it was really fun. And it was a completely new challenge for me. And I do like those. So I set those up, and for women to start to share that stuff intentionally was helpful, because then you start to pick up on like, oh, that happens to you too. And that's a normal thing, or that I didn't know about that. This is new information. So it's just a way of like sharing information that I think the health of females is dependent upon. And it also allows for almost like the buddy system, like, oh, you're ovulating too? Like, let's do this set together. And which is a little bit ridiculous. It was super fun. And there's also just not so much of the competitive aspect, because like it's good and it can be very healthy. So the women who are ovulating can compete with the other women who are ovulating. But if you're on your period and you're trying to go up against the woman who's ovulating, it doesn't work out.
I'll ovulate so much more than you right now.
Let's bet
Chipotle on this. Who can ovulate the most right now? Me and you.
there are significant differences in the hormones of a female when she is bleeding and when she is ovulating, and her workout will reflect that.
Yeah.
So if you are working with women who are in the same cycle, but instead of like, okay, well, only work out by yourself, making it so that, okay, I kind of grouped people together. So based on where they are in pregnancy, where they are in postpartum, and I have some women who are perimenopausal or menopausal, as well as who have had like total hysterectomy, so they don't have any sort of cycle at all, or in the postpartum time period when they are experiencing lactational amenorrhea and they don't have their period, then we'll just use the moon. So it's like, okay, well, there's a full moon, so it's kind of like ovulation. We're going to do that. And so those, I have a set of 4 different like rep schemes that those women would do. We're all working out together.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's really cool to see the community that starts to happen with that. And I think especially in the past 2 years, that's just been so missing, that, having a place where they could go and show up and it kind of felt normal was really, really important for people. And, I kind of backed off a little bit of classes like at the beginning of COVID, because I was like, okay, I don't want my practice to get shut down because somebody's trying to say that this is non-essential,
Yeah.
But then I was
advanced rehab, it's advanced rehab.
It was very advanced rehab, because I was like, okay, no, this is medically necessity, like absolutely medical necessity here. So we're going to go with it, and I'm going to keep doing classes because these people absolutely need physical activity. Yep. And whether they're my patients or not, because some people aren't patients and they just come to class. So I can absolutely justify anybody showing up for that. So that doesn't answer your question at all, but that's, a little bit about my workout.
Yeah. Well, now I think it's great because now it really gives people a picture of what it's like to talk to or have lunch with Lindsay. This is what it's like. You ask one question, it goes off the rails, you bring it back, it still goes off the rails. But the amazing thing is, I think along the way you did cite research while off the rails, that is tough to do. I want you to know that, and it's
hard.
appreciated.
I'm hanging on,
Yeah. She has evidence-based schizophrenia or something. I'm not sure what it is. Anyways, but
Tom Brady does too. He's good.
Probably. No, but I think you did hit on, in all seriousness, I think you did hit on some important points. One of which one of the things we always talk about in the clinic gym hybrid model is this idea like, we will never win the game with more space than our local big box gym. You just won't. You're not going to have more space. You're not. Right. We'll never win the game because we have the newest or best or most equipment. You're never going to do that. You're never going to win the game with, we have a better hot tub, sauna, blah, blah, blah. It's just, you don't have the money for those facilities, and that's fine. Let the other jokers play that game, because the one thing you do have is expertise. And so I think it's pretty obvious, like, you have the expertise around this. And when I'm sure when patients hear that, or you talk to them about it, they're like, absolutely, that makes perfect sense. I wouldn't want to train anywhere else because I don't feel as safe at my local big box gym as I do here, because they understand the luteal phase versus the, like all these things. And you like bringing those up reassures those people those women are in a very, we could say, vulnerable place, right? Like, it's one of the, I'm not saying they're physically vulnerable. I'm just saying, like, mentally we're in this state of like, you're bringing another life into the world, play it safe, right? That's that's deep in the double helix, like whether you want it to be or not. Yeah. So I think it's great. And along with that expertise, I think it's so easy to sell people into a fitness program when you decide who you want to serve. So in this case, you want to serve those young and up and coming mothers, right? That's essentially who it is. So how do you talk to them? What do you talk to them about? Becomes super easy because you know what they're going to go through. And there's a saying in marketing, you want to get to the point where you know your customer better than they know themselves. So for example, if you're marketing a weight loss program that involves exercise, you want to know them better than they know themselves. You know that 2 weeks in to a new exercise program, they're going to be sore as hell, right? Like to the point where it's difficult to put on socks, right? They're sore as hell. So talk about, hey, you're going to be sore in a week. Here's some steps to reduce soreness. That kind of stuff. They're like, wow, you really understand it. You've gone through that whole thing with the prenatal, the preconception, conception, prenatal, postpartum, and you say, here's what's coming up next. Here's what we're training for. Here's what we're doing. And here's the rep schemes appropriately. Like, it would not be hard for, in my mind, I picture it's not hard for you to talk a woman into the fitness classes, right?
No, I mean, I think actually this is a complete plug. Reading your newsletter has helped encourage me to talk to more patients about it, because for a little while it was kind of like my happy little space where, everyone had medical reasons to not wear masks and work out. So I was like, I don't really need to push this that hard. This is just a great little space where nobody is coming in. But reading, when I signed up for your newsletter, I was like, okay, you know what? I really do need to start talking to more of my patients about this, because I want more of them to join. And when I talk to them about it, they do join. And, it's when I'm there for the weekend, because if I'm not teaching over a weekend and I'm in town, I'm going to be at that class. And so I don't take it for granted that a lot of my patients want to hang out with me. Like, we have really intimate conversations during their treatments. Yeah. And so we can continue those in more of a community setting and like get to know each other better and hang out on the weekends. But, you were saying about how you get to the point where your patient or whoever it is that you're working with better than they know themselves. One of the things, because, I taught so many classes in person for a while, and then I decided that I was going to put my postpartum rehab class online, which I did not as a COVID thing at all. Like, I was already planning to do that, and then it ended up quite convenient. But my one friend who took the course, because it's online, and so my recommendation, because there are people who don't have access to any of this information anywhere in their community. I wanted for everybody that I knew, or anybody who knew me, to be able to say, well, here's what Dr. Lindsay Mumma is recommending for postpartum rehabilitation. This is a 6-week program that you can do on your own. But people who are local, I say, enroll in the class. As long as you have taken the first 2 classes and you have like some amount of the base information. And we start off with diaphragmatic breathing and like really slowing stuff down. As long as you've done that, then you can come and join us for women's fitness, and we won't ramp it up the same way that we do for other people. We will take it very slow with you, because the intention of the postpartum time period is healing and resetting a foundation for stability. And my one girlfriend who was taking the class, she was like, I swear to God, it wasn't an online class and you were actually watching me through my computer, because you kept saying, you probably have your hands here. And then I would look and my hands were exactly where you said that they would be, but you were not in my house. And I don't understand how you knew that. And I was like, well, because I've been postpartum myself. I've coached so many women who are postpartum. I've worked with patients who are postpartum. And I know that when I say to put your hands on your lower abdomen, you avoid the spot that's kind of soft and squishy. So, I know what this is like, and I know how to help you recreate proprioception in that area so that your brain and your body are ready for healing. And it's really freaking important. So, yeah. Anyway, we went off the rails. I mean, I went off. You seem to stay on track. You're doing a great job.
No, that's, I think this is all interesting because I'm really trying to encourage people to, find what you're an expert in and stick there. And when people ask like, oh, I want to open a clinic gym hybrid in 6 months, I think one of the big steps, maybe the biggest step, is deciding the perfect avatar, right? Because then you can talk to them about the things that you can agree. You can use a secret language. You can use the secret hand placement. You can use all that stuff. And they go, this is the place for me. Like, I would not want to be anywhere else. And in fact, and price becomes a non-issue. Like, so many people, when we work on pricing, I say like, you got to end up for small group classes between $200 and $300 a month for people, right? So 4 people at a time, get between $200 and $300, unless you're in like New York City, it needs to go like to $500, right? But just consistently. And they're like, I don't know anybody to pay that. And I'm like, the right person who hears your secret language and hears you as an expert would gladly pay that amount. Not every one of them, but enough certainly to fill your little 800 square foot gym or whatever you got. Like, you're talking about like 50 people, 60 people, right? So I think like if you're into, rock climbers, like, and you start talking about the different secret language in rock climbing and the grips and the, what kind of route it was and all the common injuries and, I can't remember. There's some move called like an Elvis or something. you start talking about those things and people start nodding their heads like, yeah, this person gets it. And then it's easy. What's your newsletter about? Well, it's about like common rock climbing injuries. And you want to go get more people in your gym? Go out and talk to rock climbing groups and clubs and, suppliers and offer to put on a class at the local REI. And with you, I'm thinking like you have all this opportunity. And I just hope people are hearing a lot of that opportunity is because Lindsay's super clear on who she's serving. She's serving somebody much like herself, which is totally cool, which was a young, new mother who wants to exercise and doesn't want to be scared in life. Now, that's not everybody. In fact, there's a lot of moms that don't want to exercise. That's fine. They're not going to be comfortable with Lindsay's place. That's fine. Like the ones who are like, I can't believe a place like this exists. I'm blown away. This is amazing. So that's the biggest lesson I'm hoping people are taking away. But on the flip side, some people go, shut up, Josh. We want to hear more of Lindsay. If people are crazy enough to want to spend a weekend with you or something, I know you put on some coursework. You certainly spoke at Parker. Recently at Parker Vegas, you warmed up the room for Michael Phelps, right? You did 8 hours of talking to get to him.
I did not get to meet him though, because his handler was like, no one else can be in the green room. And so Dr. Krennic had to like get my bag out of the green room because I wasn't allowed to be where Michael Phelps.
Happened to me in Dallas. Yeah. I left my bag in there and then Damon John goes in there and basically places on lockdown. I'm like, dude, it's just a gray bag. Dude, so anyways.
I just would like to get my bag in my phone. Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, fine. Michael Phelps, we could have been friends. But
so you'll be at Parker in Orlando, right? And probably some others. But if somebody wants to spend the weekend specifically going over your methods of evaluating, treating all these things with the pelvic floor, where can they do that? How can they do that?
So the Perinatal Manual Care course, which is put on by myself and Dr. Erica Boland, that is a Move Mentors course. And we run that with Gestalt Education, which is Dr. Brett Winchester and Taylor Premer. And they host us in St. Louis. And then we're actually also doing another course in Annapolis, Maryland. And that
Hold on real quick. If people want to sign up for that course through Gestalt, it's through the Gestalt
if they just go
website?
to gestaltedu.com, they can sign up for it. Or if you go to lindsaymumma.com, LINDSAYMUMMA, then you can find like my teaching schedule and stuff.
All right, perfect.
But
Annapolis.
There is I want to make sure that I don't misspeak about it because it's really freaking cool, but there is a chiropractic residency program that they are going to be running kind of out of the Elevate Life Clinic. And they asked if they could, if we would be interested in kind of like promoting their program, which I very much so am. Dr. Eric Korzen is one of the docs at the Elevate Life Clinic. And I know the owner of the clinic, Dr. Johns, but they want to start a residency program for chiropractors that kind of brings people into their, they have a multidisciplinary clinic and they want to kind of create better continuing education for new graduates. So I think I'm not positive, but I think it's an 18-month residency where you could go and work for them and it's a paid residency. It's such a brilliant idea. So they are hosting us in October. So in April, I will be in St. Louis. Dr. Boland and I will be teaching the Move Mentors Perinatal Manual Care course. And then in October, we're teaching that class in Annapolis at the Elevate Life Clinic and that is where they are starting. Like they're going through like credentialing processes and everything. Like they're really, really doing this thing right. And they're going to start a chiropractic residency program. So they wanted our course to be one of their kind of recommended ones that they would offer to their residents. Yes, that would be what they're called for the residency program.
Awesome.
So that's where I'll be teaching. And then I'm in the process of writing a book. I self-published 3 books. The first trimester, the second trimester, and the third trimester, because after my first pregnancy, I realized how frequently people were just asking, what about my situation? Because I'll spout off research and I'll share this is the, most common findings and blah, blah, blah. And people are like, yeah, but what about you? Because they know that I'm an absolute jerk when it comes to my own health, and that I take it very seriously. And that, and they wanted to know, okay, well, you work out and you eat food intentionally and you don't eat other food intentionally. And, you're meditating and doing things that are good for your body. Did you have this happen? And what did you do if you got leg cramps and et cetera? And so I decided at the beginning of my second pregnancy that I would just write about the experience. And so I did that. And at the time, I kind of jokingly, I remembered it this past week. I was like, I actually wrote that at the end of my third book. I wrote, maybe my next book will be about the pelvic floor, but my next book is definitely going to be about the pelvic floor. And so I'm figuring out what publishing looks like. I may self-publish again, or I might try and actually work with a publisher. We'll see. I mean, Kindle kind of makes it really easy to publish, so I might just do that. But I am writing a book about the pelvic floor, and it's going to be for the general population, which also includes physicians, because so many of us just have no basis for information about the pelvic floor. And like I was saying when I spoke at Parker, the anatomy of the shoulder and the anatomy of the hip, and you have just glossed over the anatomy of the pelvic floor because it's very inconveniently located. And I don't think that's appropriate for those of us who are experts in neuromusculoskeletal care. Like, we need to know all of our anatomy literally in and out, and we also need to understand its function. And so I think it would be very, very helpful for the general population to have a better understanding of that. I also think that it would be very helpful for doctors to have a better understanding of that. And, the only thing that people know is Kegels. And if those worked, then 1 out of every 4 or even 1 out of every 3 women would not be peeing their pants. So.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. So remember when you asked me if you want to take a course? Yeah. So perinatal movement, the Movementors Perinatal Manual Care course in April and October. I also teach for MPI. So if you want to come to any Motion Palpation Institute courses, I'm teaching some of those. And I'll be back at Parker for stuff whenever they ask me.
Yeah. I think you're going to get out there. I think the desire to talk more and learn more about the pelvic floor and prenatal and perinatal and midnatal is growing,
Yeah.
It's more and more people are out there looking for it, looking for ideas. The other thing is, if you want to get people primed up and ready, I remember hearing Rob Wolf talk about like how something at one point, a third of the women in his gym who were of the right age were saying like, yeah, we've been trying to get pregnant and I said it was more than 2 years. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you some accolades here. He said, you get them on a paleo diet, dairy-free, gluten-free, everything-free, fun-free. But anyways, you get them on that diet and then you get them doing big movements. Like, it kind of like restores your systems in your body and gets you back to normal. And then within 2 years, they're pregnant. And some of these people have been trying for 10 years, Yeah. And I'm not saying there's a perfect line between, that it's going to work for everybody, but it certainly can't hurt. It certainly can't hurt.
Does not hurt to be able to control your pelvis in a deadlift and have better fertility.
Right. And look better in a pair of jeans, right?
It's like so easy to draw those conclusions because of the underlying biomechanics influence your organ health.
Right.
So if you're missing one, then you can very easily be missing the other. And there is a lot of evidence on the impact of diet and fertility. So,
well, I guess people can learn that from you at one of those weekend seminars.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. And I hope they catch a glimpse of you at Parker and all the other places you'll be, because if they're into that, I think you are the person to deliver it. So I want to say thanks. Yeah. Thanks for the time today.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. I always enjoy talking to you, especially when you compare me to Tom Brady and then simultaneously, like in the next 5 seconds, put me down about something. So it's good for my ego.
Good. All right. Well, I'm happy to do that for you. And with that, I want to sign off by saying, I think you're a perfect example of what we sign off saying every time, which is go out there, maximize your license, and live the life you dream of. Thanks so much, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for checking out these videos. I hope they're useful. We'll cover things like rehab, exercise, business model, progressions, layout, everything else that helps you build a clinic. So if you're interested, you can click here, there, here, or anywhere to get more videos just like this. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you soon.